Hey everyone, this is Heidi from the blog Hands Occupied with another knitting video tutorial. Today we're going to go over some of my favorite tips, tricks, and secrets for how to knit on double pointed needles in the round. So there's a couple go-to tips and tricks I always use when I'm casting on a lot of stitches. This is a baby beanie, and the cast on for this one is only 56 stitches, but I use this same trick whenever I do a long tail cast on. You need, in this cast on, to know how long to make your long tail to have success. So what you're gonna do is wrap your yarn around the needles you're gonna knit the hat in 10 times. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And so this gives you a rough estimate of how much yarn you need to cast on 10 stitches. So for 56, you simply have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and then I'll just do an even 60 because you always want to add a few inches for your for the end of your tail. So we're going to grab the yarn there with our long tail and do a regular long tail cast on that many of you know and love. And if you're new to the long tail cast on, you should check out AllFreeKnitting for a long tail cast on tutorial. So now I'm going to cast on 56 stitches on my double pointed needles. So there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So 14 goes into 56 4 times, if I remember right. So one nice thing about casting on in the round for double pointed needles is that you can use this to keep track of the number of stitches you're casting on without having to count all the way to 56. So right now we've done 14 on our first needle. Now, without twisting our work, we grab our second needle and can cast on 14 on this needle and the next one and the next one to total 56 without having to worry too much about losing our stitch count. So now we're going to do 14 more stitches, but on our second needle. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So you'll see that I held the 2 needles parallel. I was careful not to get too much slack between the needles to keep our cast on nice and neat. And I also made sure not to twist the cast on because otherwise our finished cast on in the round won't work. So I'm going to real quick cast on 14 more stitches on 2 more needles for 56, and I'll come back in a second and show you how to join those into a round. All right, so on my needles here, on 4 of my 5 double pointed knitting needles, I have 14 stitches. And so I made sure to use the trick of counting to 14 on each needle, and now I'm laying out my cast on in front of me in this kind of hashtag # tic-tac-toe shape. And so what I'm doing here is making sure that my cast on hasn't twisted at all. Because if your cast on twists, you're doing something which is called creating a Mobius shape, which means that if you knit around it, there's no way for your knitting to do anything but become entangled the more you go. So it's really critical when joining your cast on into a round to avoid that twist. And so what I'm doing is just checking by looking along the inside edge of all of my cast on to make sure this ridge of the long tail cast on is all facing inward and not outward anywhere. Now I'm going to toss my stitch marker on to mark the beginning of a round, and then I am ready to start following my pattern as written. And one final tip I have for you for success is that I always work the first stitch of the round to secure my untwisted cast on in shape and to lock down my stitch marker in my work. So this works great for things like this really cute baby hat, but it also works really well for cowls or anything else you need to work in the round on double pointed knitting needles. So those are some of my favorite tips and tricks for successful knitting in the round on double pointed knitting needles. If you have any comments or more tips of your own, go ahead and leave those in the comments, and don't forget to come back soon for more knitting video tutorials.